Welcome to our latest music quiz video on Patreon. This is Tim in Tokyo,
And this is Paul in Hanover, New Hampshire. How's it going, eh?
and we have not done one of these for a very long time. Sorry about that.
Yes, I had a quiz cooked up about Casey Kasem once upon a time, but I'll have to find it. But it'll be the next one we do, I promise.
So this is our sixth music quiz. I've got together 5 questions, some of
Okay.
which you might actually be able to get the answers to. I tried not to make them just too excruciatingly hard. Because
Who
sometimes
is the,
my inclination is to write questions like "He'll never get this," "No human alive will ever get this."
yes, who was the third assistant engineer to the producer of, the self-titled Player album, let's say. Well, couldn't find it anywhere in the credits on the record. That was my only source.
Okay, so here's question 1.
Okay.
Bobby Daniels played drums in Kenny Rogers' band for some years.
Hmm.
He was also convicted in 1989 of murdering his ex-wife.
Ah.
But this question isn't about either of those things. Daniels is also notable for having co-written and co-produced a certain 1980s novelty record. Which one? A. Eat It by Weird Al Yankovic. B. The Curly Shuffle by Jumpin' the Saddle Band, a big hit my freshman year at college. C. The Super Bowl Shuffle by the 1985 Chicago Bears, from my junior year of college. And D. Pac-Man Fever by Buckner and Garcia.
Hmm. Wow. Yeah, don't actually know the answer. I'm certainly not going to look it up because that would be cheating, but I'm going to go with the Curly Shuffle.
No, it was the Super Bowl Shuffle.
Okay, some other shuffle.
Yeah, you had that part right. It was a shuffle.
Okay, that's pretty good. Drummers in rock history, end up meeting ignominious ends, or doing, if they're not dead, they've done something dastardly in many cases.
Yeah.
Like the drummer for Derek and the Dominoes, like killed his mother with a hammer, and has been in mental institutions ever since. Awful,
Yeah.
just
and,
awful.
and of course,
Every time I listen to Layla, that's all I can think of.
And of course, Spinal Tap lost many drummers.
That's right. He
Tap.
choked on somebody else's vomit, and then spontaneous combustion actually, happens on camera to the last one, or the next to last one, after we hear that same thing happened earlier to a different drummer.
Okay, number 2. I sometimes watch old Weird Al videos on YouTube. The video for Weird Al's 2006 single White and Nerdy, a parody of the hip-hop track Ridin' by Chamillionaire, is notable for a former teen heartthrob who dances behind Al in some scenes of the video. Who is it? A. Leif Garrett, B. Donny Osmond, C. Tony DeFranco, or D. Sean Cassidy?
Donny Osmond?
That's right.
Okay. It didn't seem like it would be Sean Cassidy because Sean Cassidy stays behind the camera, these days, and has for quite a number of years. He's produced television shows and such, but hasn't been shown in front of the camera for a long time.
Yeah, Weird Al's videos often parody the video for the song that he's parodying. And so if you watch Ridin' and then you watch White and Nerdy, you can pick out all these things that he took from the original. And there is someone kind of dancing next to Chamillionaire in the original video. So Weird Al somehow recruited Donny Osmond. He's just like really jamming out behind Al there.
I figured, and the other thing that clued me in that it might have been Donny Osmond is that Donny Osmond rarely misses opportunities to poke fun at himself a little bit. And also, it just keeps him in the public eye, which can't hurt anything for him.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Well, we might be slowing down a little, folks. I can't seem to do with this record. It kind of maxes out, and it's frustrating.
Well, maybe we could just spend the rest of this this video cast, whatever the video, singing Kraftwerk's "We Are the Robots" and jerking. We are the robots. Do, 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 do. The greatest Devo song never sung by Devo. So you'd probably say the opposite, that Devo is basically Kraftwerk with energy domes.
Okay, question 3. I'm sure you've heard more than one version of the song This Masquerade, best known as the first hit for George Benson.
Mm-hmm.
But who was the first artist to record the song? A. Helen Reddy, B. The Carpenters, C. George Benson, or D. Leon Russell? And all of them have recorded it, but which was first?
Yes, of course. Yeah, I've heard Helen Reddy's version because Mom used to play the I Am Woman album over and over again back when we were kids. Let's see. And who was it a hit for?
George Benson.
It was George Benson. So you've got George Benson among the answers,
yeah.
The possible answers, too.
Yeah, he's C. Mm-hmm.
Okay. The Carpenters?
No, it's Leon Russell.
Oh, okay.
He wrote the song.
Did not know that.
And recorded it in 1972. It was on an album, also on the B side of his single Tightrope, which peaked at number 104.
Really?
Yes.
Gosh, that's kind of a classic now.
Then Helen Reddy also recorded it in 72 for the I Am Woman LP. The Carpenters recorded it in 73,
okay.
And it was on the B side of Please Mr. Postman.
Okay.
And then finally George Benson recorded it in 1976, and it went out as an A side for the first time and got to number 10.
I wonder why it took so long to become an A-side. It would seem to have all of the kind of, bells and whistles, like the hook, for example, is quite good.
Yeah, I remember when I first heard, well, actually, I didn't know this until I researched it just recently, but I had always thought that if George Benson had the hit with it, then that must mean that he recorded it first, which is completely wrong.
Yeah, and
he recorded
in the history
at least
of pop
four.
music, in the history of pop music, it's, frequently wrong as an assumption.
But yeah, he did it 4 years after it was originally recorded.
Well, these are good questions. I think I've gotten like 1 out of 3 so far.
But you got 1. That's better than sometimes.
But 1 out of 3 is bad. Hope there's a Meatloaf song later.
Well, let's see if you know these last 2.
Okay.
So since the last time we did a music quiz many months ago, Gordon Lightfoot has died. What was his biggest hit on the Billboard Hot 100?
Ooh.
A. Sundown. B. Carefree Highway. C. If You Could Read My Mind. Or D. The Wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald.
Sundown.
That's right. Yeah, it hit number 1 in 1974.
Yeah, that I actually knew somehow. Don't remember how.
Yeah, Carefree Highway got to number 10, also in 74. If You Could Read My Mind got to number 5 in 1970. And Edmund Fitzgerald peaked at number 2 in 1976.
Okay, I knew that one was later. I did not realize that If You Could Read My Mind was that early.
Yeah, neither did I.
And Sundown is what year? 72?
74.
74, okay.
Yeah, Sundown and Carefree Highway are on the same album from 74.
Right. Yes. That's right. I'm not a gigantic Gordon Lightfoot fan and never have been, but I
or
think
even a regular-sized one. Oh, hi, are you a Gordon Lightfoot fan?
I'm a giant one.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. But Sundown's always been my favorite song of his, and probably in my top 100 of pop songs, at least. Speaking of giant size, I think it was in the book All the Marvels that I read this summer about, a journalist who says he's going to sit down and read every Marvel comic ever published. And that's not quite what he does, but it's an interesting book. But at one point, he teases the idea that, there were all these giant size comics that Marvel printed in the mid 70s, giant size Spider Man, giant size monsters, giant size whatever. And the author's name escapes me as usual, says that, try not to snicker when you say, the title Giant Sized Man Thing.
Oh, yeah. That's a classic. Okay, finally, a question about the wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald. So it's about an actual ship by that name that sank in Lake Superior on November 10th, 1975.
Right, just a year before. It's not some ancient, sea legend or anything like that.
Yeah. When the ship was to be christened in 1958, it was named after a real person named Edmund Fitzgerald. Who was he? A famous Canadian ship captain, the first to navigate the Great Lakes. B, chairman of the board of the company who commissioned its construction. C, a founding father of Canada. Or D, the president of the company that actually constructed the ship?
I'm going to guess A. I think it could only be A or C.
Okay,
so.
It's actually B.
Shows you what I know.
So the SS Edmund Fitzgerald was owned by Northwestern Mutual Life Insurance Company of Milwaukee, which had invested in the iron and minerals industries on a large scale, and the Fitzgerald was an ore freighter. Edmund Fitzgerald was the president and chairman of the board of Northwestern Mutual. In 1958, over Fitzgerald's objections, the board unanimously voted to name the ship after Fitzgerald, who abstained from the vote.
Well, I think history will be kind to him for having done that, abstained from the vote. But man, I always thought it was a much more romantic,
So did I.
romantically named name, having something to do with Canadian history or, at least with seafaring Canada. So that's a little bit of a disappointment.
Yeah, and for a long time, I thought that the Edmund Fitzgerald was either fictional or had sank a long time ago, like
I thought so
centuries.
Yeah, that's why I put in dropped in the caveat that this had only happened the year before, just to stress that. But you and I may have been the only people who ever heard that song and thought that it had happened like 50 or 100 years earlier. So why am I trying to disabuse listeners to that notion?
It's such a it's kind of a romantic sounding song, but it's about it's like an ore freighter that was named after the chairman of the board of a company.
Right.
So business oriented.
But the loss of so many lives in an accident in the ocean is such a long-standing problem. Big tragedies like this have been happening throughout the years that there have been ships big enough to carry, more than two people. So that he kind of eulogizes them in terms of those, older kinds of folk songs and elegies, I think.
Okay, so that's the quiz. And I still have a few questions floating around that I haven't used, but they're not really ready for prime time yet.
Ask me how to spell Edmund. I can do it.
Okay, so we'll try to do this a little more often again with summer vacation and all kinds of other stuff. We've really struggled here, but
yes.
See what we can do. Anyway, thanks for watching.